Everyone, welcome to our first webinar of 2020. My name is Hope Newport. I'm the Family Services Manager here at the International FOP Association. Before we go ahead and get started, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of information about the webinar platform we're using. There is an option for participants or attendees who are viewing the webinar to submit questions in two different ways. You can do that through either the comments section or there is a Q&A. So if you do a Q&A question, it will be submitted just to me, and I will ask those questions at the end of the webinar after we've had our presentations. So yeah, you can submit questions to those, either the comments or the Q&A throughout the webinar, and we'll answer all of those at the end. You're muted just to prevent background noise from any of the attendees who are watching. And the other thing I wanted to let everyone know is just that this webinar will be recorded. So you will be able to go back and view recordings if you have questions about the information as well. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce our two panelists. So joining us today is Erin Danzer. She is an FOP community member. Erin is 21 years old and she lives in Oceanside, California. She is currently going to school for her AA in communications. And in her free time, she likes doing arts and crafts as well as writing poetry. She enjoys reading or studying at her favorite local coffee shops and loves going on walks by the beaches with her service dog, Pine. So Erin is going to be starting us off by sharing some of her experience as an individual with FOP who has a service dog. And after she's had a chance to share that, we are going to hear from Erin Rich. So Erin Rich is an instructor and an applicant program manager for the North Central region of Canine Companions for Independence. She began working for Canine Companions in 2005 as a summer intern and a part-time kennel technician while studying animal sciences at the Ohio State University. Prior to her position as the program manager, the applicant program manager, she graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture and relocated to the CCI National Headquarters, which are in Santa Rosa, California, to start the apprenticeship program. There, she gained her instructor certification, trained hearing dogs, and then managed the Canine Early Development Center. So those are the two panelists that we'll have with us here today, and we'll have time for questions at the end, but right now we're going to let Erin start us off. So go ahead, Erin.
Okay, so hi, I'm Erin Danzer. So I have had, me and Pine have been a team since about 2018, about middle of 2018, so about a year and a half now. See, the reason I got a service dog is because I became wheelchair bound in early 2018, I guess. And so because I became wheelchair bound, I just found it really difficult to get around, and so I decided a service dog. So I looked into service dogs. I wasn't really sure about what they could do. So I did a little research, and then I finally applied, and Pine has been really helpful to me. Just he goes to school with me, he goes to work with me. So just, yeah. So here's I guess I kind of sped through everything, but so in 2016, I graduated high school, and then I started college, and halfway through college was when I got my hip flare. And I found it really difficult to walk, and so I didn't go out of my house for about probably a little over a year, and then I finally started using a wheelchair, and then so just because being in a wheelchair compared to just being able to walk every day, I started noticing the little things that were really difficult for me to do when I was on my own, like picking things up or opening doors. And so instead of having someone with me 24/7, I decided that's when I looked into a service dog. So next slide. So yeah, so this is how I applied for a service dog. For me, it was more of a quicker process. Normally it can take from like 3 months to I guess 9 months. For me, it only took about maybe, I guess, the whole process. Well, so yeah, so for me, it was pretty much all of 3 months. And so, yeah, and then next slide. So here's some pictures of like places that we've been so far. I guess to have a service dog, it is, it's a, I forget what you call it. It's like it's a privilege, not a right. Even though they say it's a right with ADA laws, it is a privilege. And so I've kind of used that privilege, I guess, to go to cool places that I wouldn't go to just by myself. So Pine has helped me with going to these places like Disneyland, the aquarium, the safari park, and it's been really fun. But he has gotten me out of the house a lot more. And so, yeah. And then next slide. So here are some of the things that Pine can, or these are like little videos, examples of what Pine can do for me. I'm not completely wheelchair bound, so at home I can still do certain things, but we're still practicing just because my FOP is progressing, so eventually I'll be wheelchair bound 24/7. So it's good to practice things that you can do just when I'm gonna not be able to do these things at all. So, but yeah, so the first video was him opening the fridge. Yeah, so eventually I'm gonna teach him to grab something out of the fridge, close the fridge, and then hand me the item. And then the next video. So this is him grabbing the remote from the other couch and bringing it to me on the couch that I'm sitting on. This happens to me a lot where I'm already sitting down. It's not just remote. Remote is the one that we're practicing on right now. But I'll be sitting down somewhere and I, forgot my phone on the table, or just like something that I need, but I'm already sitting down or laying in bed, and so Pine can bring that to me instead of me having to struggle to get up and then go and get it. And then the next video is him tugging open a drawer. So he can, as long as I have like a tie thing on any of the knobs on the drawers, he's able to tug it open for me. And then he can also push them closed. So if like I'm over in the living room and and then I left a drawer open in the kitchen, I can have him go into the kitchen and close it for me. So, and then next slide. So places Pine goes to work with, so Pine goes to work with me. A few of the things, so I wouldn't have gotten a job if I didn't have Pine. When I'm at work, I'm completely 100% on my own. I don't have my parents with me or a caregiver or anything. It's just me and Pine. And a few of the obstacles that I would have struggled with if I didn't have Pine was if I dropped something, or just to get into the actual building. I work at a movie theater, so just to get into the building, they have push plates, which is the video right here. And so every time I go to work, Pine does the push plates, which opens the front door, and then I'm able to go to work. And then in my break room, I don't have a video of that, but I had like another tie thing like you saw in the other videos on the door, and Pine would tug open the break room door with that, and I would be able to go in. So yeah, and then next video, or next slide. So having a service dog isn't, I mean, it's very, very helpful, but there does come with obstacles, and some of the things that I didn't realize I would have to deal with before I had Pine. So Pine does attract more people. Before I had Pine, I was a very shy person. I didn't really talk to anybody, and Also, because of that, I wasn't really good about advocating for myself when I was out. Like if someone was in my way or if I needed something, I just didn't really speak up for myself. And with Pine, because he attracts a lot of people, I get a lot of people asking about him, you know, what type of dog is he? How old is he? Those are the three main questions. Or what type of dog is he? How old is he? And is he a boy or a girl? Those are the three main questions I get out at least every time I go out from some stranger. But also because I've been talking to more people, because Pine attracting people, I've been better about speaking up for myself with things that I need and just advocating for myself when I'm out. So, but also because of him attracting people, it kind of distracts him from working a little bit. So you really have to pay attention to that. So a lot of people want to pet him as like we're just walking by, or if I'm sitting somewhere for a long time, people want to just come up and pet him. So people petting him without my permission, and then people distracting him when he's supposed to be working, like talking to him, making kissy noises at him. And then I do have people taking pictures of me. I know they're taking pictures of Pine, but they're not asking for my permission. So those are a few of the things that I struggle with just having a service dog. And then just having a dog in general, there are things that you need to take care of him. So brushing his teeth, cleaning his ears out, exercise, and then we have to train at least 5 minutes every day to keep up on his training. It's not like he's going to forget, but it just helps perfect him. And then feed him breakfast and dinner, and then taking him out. I usually take him out every 2 hours just to help prevent him from going in the house. He's very well trained, but there have been accidents where I forgot to take him out, or I was just really busy and it just didn't come to my mind and he went in the house or something. So next slide. And then a few more responsibilities. I never leave the house without a collapsible bowl or just any type of bowl for food and water. I always have poop bags on me, and then treat bags are optional it's just, you know, like if he does something that we're practicing, and so he get a treat. And then booties, depending on the weather. And then his vest, and then CCI requires to have them wearing a prong collar, at least for service dog teams, and then a flat collar, and then his leash. And then being in a wheelchair, one of the things that I was really concerned about before we graduated was how I would be able to pick up after him. And so CCI referred me to this really cool website that has collapsible pooper scooper things. So they come with disposable bags, and then they extend out, and I'm able to pick it up whenever I'm out on my own. So that's really cool. That's just a link to the website. But yeah.
Sure. Well, hi, everybody. This is Erin Rich from Canine Companions for Independence. Welcome, and thank you guys for tuning in. I'm our Applicant Program Manager out at our North Central region in Delaware, Ohio. We're just about a half hour north of the Columbus area. I've been with the organization for about 15 years now in a variety of different roles, but just moved back here to Ohio. Missouri is one of the 14 different states that our Ohio region covers. So I'll be going over what our applicant program and beyond looks like to give you a full scope of the program. So it'll be in addition to the wonderful individual story that Erin Danzer was able to give you guys. Let's see if I can go. So as I mentioned, our North Central region here in Ohio covers 14 different states. They're highlighted in that light blue color there. We, by the end of the year, we're currently one of the only regions without an on-site dormitory facility for our team training students. That'll be changing by the end of this year when we move to our new campus in New Albany, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes southeast of here, but still within the Columbus area. Our other regions are located, you'll see our dark blue region over there. To the left is our Northeast region in Medford, New York, Long Island area. Southeast region is located in Orlando, Florida. Our South Central region just opened, I think, in fall of 2015, and that is in Irving, Texas, covering just the state of Texas right now. Our Southwest region is located in Oceanside, California, about an hour from San Diego. And our national headquarters in Northwest region, where everything started, is located in Santa Rosa, California, about an hour and a half north of San Francisco. So they're in the beautiful Sonoma County wine country. And I believe the next slide will talk about kind of where everything out there starts, which is with our breeding program. So we do have our own breeding program with Labrador and Golden Retrievers. So they're either full lab, full golden, or a cross between those two breeds. More likely than not, I would say the majority of our dogs graduating these days are some sort of a cross between the two. And our breeders, males and females, are both located in about a 100-mile radius of the Santa Rosa, California campus. So we have volunteer breeder caretakers that whelp these litters of puppies in their homes. We have approximately 85 females or so that are active at any given time. We hope that they will produce up to about 5 litters, but of course we take everything on a case-by-case basis, looking at after the best, whatever's best as far as health and care of the breeders themselves and the puppies, of course. If for some reason our breeder caretakers can't whelp a litter in their home, because of course we know life happens, whether medical conditions, family emergencies, or vacation plans were made, because of course you never know when a breeder is about to come into heat until they do. We have a backup plan with I don't have a slide of it on here, but our Canine Early Development Center, or basically our whelping facility, which is also on site, where we are staffed pretty much 24/7 to whelp those litters in-house if need be as well, because we want to support those wonderful volunteer breeder caretakers in any way that we can, since they do so much for us. It's also kind of their supply center. If they have any sort of supplies we lend out to them for whelping a litter, we supply everything from A to Z, so they can get that from the CEDC or whelping center as well. So those litters of puppies from birth to 8 weeks will be in that breeder caretaker's home, and then at 8 weeks of age, they come back to that CEDC building for their first round of vaccinations and medical exam with our in-house veterinarians. And then they go out to their wonderful puppy raisers in different areas all throughout the country, to the different regions. So our volunteer puppy raisers will raise a puppy from the time they're 8 weeks old until they're 18 months. The puppy raisers also do a ton of work for us. Raising that one individual puppy is a ton of work and patience and money. Our puppy raisers are responsible for taking them to weekly puppy classes in their area for things like basic obedience and socialization. They're also working on crate training and housebreaking. If litters are at the CEDC, the staff there do start crate training very, very early on at 3 or 4 weeks of age, just by introducing the different pieces to them very slowly, all done positively, of course. But then it's really up to the breeder caretakers to build the duration on that in a positive manner as well. In addition to all the socialization and good house manners that they're teaching them, so that these guys can grow up to be really well-trained, well-behaved assistance dogs down the road. So it's thanks to them that they're spending all this time with these individual puppies, because then once they turn 18 months, then we go on to our next step, which for them is coming into professional training. So once those dogs, as I mentioned, reach 18 months, the volunteer puppy raisers have the heartbreaking job of bringing them back to our regional centers and letting them go. So they turn into us for the next 6 to 9 months. where our professional instructor staff is taking them through a lot of evaluations. The very first couple of weeks that they're here, we're evaluating them medically for eyes, hips, elbows, hearts, any other exams as we feel are needed to ensure that any dogs graduating from our program are healthy. Not only healthy enough to be assistance dogs, but some of those dogs may also be selected for our breeding program. Of course, we want to make sure that genetically we're not inbreeding and we're not breeding conditions that could be problematic for our graduates down the road. So if any of those issues pop up, it's of course possible that they could be released from our program for anything like hip or elbow dysplasia, early onset of things like cataracts or any heart valve conditions. And of course, we make sure that they are all going to a good home, either the puppy raiser who gets the first dibs at adopting their dog back that they've raised. Otherwise, we do have a very lengthy release dog list as well. I want to say the waiting list for that is probably in the range of 2 to 5 years right now. The other thing our training staff is really good at looking for is evaluating dog temperament. Of course, that's that very important piece I talked about with the puppy raisers, doing a lot of socialization with the puppies. And the reason that's important is because once they turn into professional training, each instructor carries multiple dogs as on what we call as a string of dogs. So they may carry anywhere from 5 to 12 dogs at a time that they're getting out every day for training. So they're not able to spend the time taking each dog individually somewhere for half an hour to an hour at a time. So hence having a dog that's already well socialized helps us move along that much quicker with their advanced training skills. But of course, we also want to make sure that those basic obedience and house manners are still there, because we still want this to be, as I mentioned, a well-behaved assistance dog, both in public as well as at home. So evaluating for things like barking and growling or aggression or fear are some big ones that we're always looking for. And so those evaluations, as this slide mentions, can be done both at the training center and in public. And then from there, once they've hit the end of that 6 to 9 months, we're talking about things like team training. That would be kind of the next step for both our dogs and the people applying for our dogs. So before I jump into the details of that, we'll go to the next slide and talk about the different types of placements that our dogs can go to. So right now we have 4. We have hearing, facility, service, and skilled companion. Hearing dogs right now are trained for adults who are deaf or hard of hearing. They do this by alerting the graduate to sounds they might not hear in their environment. So they're going to do that by nudging the handler's leg with their nose. And then they kind of lead the handler to wherever that sound is located. And right now, the dogs for this specific category come from all of our regions, but the training right now is only currently done at our Northeast and Southeast regions in Santa Rosa, California, and Orlando, Florida. After that, we have our facility dogs. So these guys are paired with professionals that are really going to utilize the dog's 40 trained commands or tasks to motivate and really inspire or reward clients with special needs. So they are typically working with specific areas. Certain examples might be a hospital or therapy setting or rehab setting, such as somebody who is a occupational or physical therapist or a speech therapist might be a facility dog handler for us. We have people who are school counselors or special education teachers. We do have a few courthouse child advocacy type placements too, forensic interviewers, for example. So people who are really going to work with children or adolescents with some sort of disability, traumatic experience that are really going to help either as a motivational tool, as a reward, but in some way, shape, or form, they are utilizing the dog's trained tasks of retrieving items, tugging, pushing on things in those sessions. And then next up, we have our service dogs. This is usually the most straightforward category that everyone associates us with. So this is when a dog is performing tasks for an individual who is able to handle the dog independently. So the folks in this category, as well as our facility and hearing dog categories, do all need to be 18 or older to qualify for these categories. Again, we're not, other than being 18 or older, in all three of those categories, we are not looking for so much what somebody's disability is, but what they're looking to utilize the dog for, and really looking for placements that are going to utilize the dog's tasks. Next up, the other variation here is our skilled companion category. So this one is where we do require a second handler be attached to the dog's training collar. This is to really ensure the safety of the team as well as the responsiveness of the dog, both at home and in public. So normally our applicants for this category are between the ages of 5 and 18, so children, adolescents, but also adults who maybe cannot cognitively or physically safely manage the dog. So they have that second person, whether that's a parent, a spouse, a caregiver who's attached to the dog's leash. They may be echoing that person's commands or giving the commands alone themselves, again, dependent on whatever the other individual's disability is. But they're making sure that the dog either responds to that person's commands or is otherwise responding and engaging to that person. And then next up, we'll switch gears a little to our application process. So these are the 6 steps that we have all of our applicants go to, whether this is your first time applying or the 5th time you're applying for one of our dogs. We ask everyone to go to our website. So that website, as you see in front of you, is cci.org/apply. So that would mean filling out our application request form, which comes straight to my email inbox. I review all of those, and then if we feel like there's a potential that our organization might be the right fit for what you're looking for, then we would send out the full application packet. And that, these days, we're normally sending that out via email, unless a hard copy form is requested, in which case then we can still send those out via postal mail. And then either way, whether it's sent via postal mail or electronically, we do ask that all materials be printed and mailed back to us. If they were sent via email right now, I think that might overload my email inbox a little bit, just due to the size of the application. Beyond that, if everything in the application packet looks good, that application packet is going to include things like an autobiography of yourself, photos of yourself, any other either training assistants or, as we call with the skilled companions, our skilled companion facilitators. Pictures of yourself, your home environment, your yard, again, any assistance you may have with you. And then from there, it's the telephone interview. It takes about 45 minutes. And then for our service, skilled, and hearing dog teams, we normally follow that with the medical or professional reference forms for the appropriate physicians or therapists. After we receive that back, we normally contact you to schedule that in-person interview, which is done here at our facility in Delaware, Ohio, or whichever region you are closest to. And then from there, that's when our selection committee, basically our entire program or training staff, gets together and discusses each application at length and decides whether or not to select someone for our program. And if selected, then that's when somebody would go on our waiting list. So with this, not only the selection committee, but anywhere in this application process, we do remind folks that at any step along the way, due to the sheer volume of application requests that we receive, it's always going to be possible to have two possible outcomes at each step. So either someone is progressed through to the next step, or someone can be declined at anywhere along the way as well, which of course we understand it can be very disappointing to receive that news. But part of our reason for doing that, besides not knowing that we're just not the right fit for everyone, but also because we are trying to maintain that waiting list that I just mentioned at or under 2 years in length to serve everybody in a reasonable time frame. So as we move on to our next slide here, I'll talk a little bit more about that waiting list and what we call our candidate program. So as I mentioned, that starts with the waiting list time would start as of the date of your personal interview. Of course, it's going to, depending on what region you're in and what category you're in, that might vary a little bit. Our service dog waiting list right now is at about a year, whereas our skilled companion list is probably closer to a year and a half, and facility is probably about 6 months to a year. But we generally say we're now trying to keep the waiting list at no more than 20 months, so we're really trying to keep it under that 2-year mark. And then our successors are those that are coming back for a dog, for their next dog. So we try to make the process go by a little bit quicker for them, and the waiting list time shorter for them. So generally within 6 to 9 months, we try to get them through the process for their next dog. So when it comes time for that to be placed with a dog, the most exciting part, we call that team training. So team training is a 2-week course. It's always a group setting. So it's not usually a one-on-one basis. Our class sizes can vary anywhere from, I would say here it's been anywhere from 6 to 20. We just had a class of 20 last May. But I would say average is maybe 8 to 10. So you are going to be working with other individuals in the room. Some of it may be group practice where we just set everybody free to do something we've just directed them to do, and we're kind of supervising in the background, or we may be pulling you aside individually one at a time, either to work with you privately one-on-one, or pulling you out in front of the class one at a time to work on something. So there's really a lot of variation, a lot of learning from one another, and getting to know each other as a group in a very short amount of time. There's a lot of learning going on in that 2 weeks between lectures given via PowerPoint presentation. There's also a good sized notebook that we give everyone to look through with printed materials. There are homework pieces that we give out. There's a practical exam as well as a exam out in public I'll talk about more in a moment, and the practice sessions that I mentioned as well. So it's a pretty exhaustive 2 weeks. We are really focusing with all of our recipients not only on how to work with the dog, but also care for the dog on a daily basis for the long term. So this is where we're introducing not only the commands, we start off with how to give commands, corrections, how to handle the dog appropriately, what pieces of equipment to handle the dog on. But then as we keep going into, say, the second week, we also expand upon those commands and show everyone, here's the basics, but here's how you can take that command, here's how you can take things like retrieve, tug, and push, and shape them into different things to kind of customize the dog to suit your needs and what you're going to need them to do for you as an individual. Next slide. So that first week is when everybody gets to meet the dogs for the first time. So the first I should back up a little bit, before we even invite people to class, about 8 weeks out or so, we are looking at what dogs we have available, as well as who's on our waiting list, and we are always making sure that we have more dogs available and ready for class than the number of students that we're inviting to a class. So for each individual that we invite, we like to say we have at least 2 or 3 dogs, sometimes 4, in mind for each individual that we're inviting, because we really want to spend the time seeing those dogs with you and seeing which one is the best fit for each person. We're not just going down a list of 1 through 10 person numbers, 1 through 10 on the dog side, and 10 people to 10 dogs. That's not how this program works. We've taken a long time getting to know each of our applicants, and the last 6 to 9 months getting to know each of these dogs, and we really want to make the best match possible. So rotations is what we call handling with each dog. So we are rotating as many dogs through your hands as possible in the first 2 days of class. Again, really seeing, okay, what does this yellow male or black female look like, and what about this other one over here, and making sure we're trying all the options, and kind of like a great big giant puzzle piece, we somehow magically make it work every time. But we're really needing to see these relationships in person, and seeing what dog really responds well and matches best with your handling style as well as your lifestyle. What dog is a dog that is going to work well not only here when your instructors are in front of you, but also what are you still going to be able to be successful with once you get home and we're not there. So the first Wednesday of class is what we call pre-matches. This is when we say we are 95% sure that this is the dog you're going to take home with you. We just want a little more time to see you one-on-one with that particular dog, see you out in public on a field trip or 2 with that particular dog, before we say, okay, this is it. This is your final match, and this is now we're 100% sure this is the dog you're taking home with you. And even within that 2 weeks, even after we've made those matches, we can still, it's rare that it happens, but we can change dogs if something isn't working out. But this is kind of that process that we have set up. That's where the communication that happens between the instructors and the students in class is super important to be happening, in case there are things that either we're not seeing, or if we have concerns, we're not just going to surprise you with something or suddenly surprise you with a different dog. We're going to be talking about any questions or concerns hopefully along the way, so that, again, by the end of that 2 weeks, everybody's feeling good about the match that's been made, and that you as an individual feel you can be successful going home with a dog. The very first night you have with a dog, either in a hotel or in our future dormitory setting, that'll usually be that first Friday night, the first week of class. We get together again that next Saturday morning and check in with everybody and see how did that go. So as we move on to our next slide here, once team training wraps up, we're not just sending you guys out the door and saying, see you, goodbye, good luck. We also have a graduate support system. So someone applying for our dog goes from being an applicant to a candidate to a team training student to hopefully a graduate. So our follow-up program is for the life of the placement. Again, we have a system in place where we are checking in with you by phone the first couple of days after getting home from team training. Hey, how's it going? Having any issues? Anything we can do to help support you? And then there will be usually monthly follow-ups via email for the first couple of months. And then normally that at about the 6-month mark is when we're scheduling a time to see you again in person. We do send our trainers out to different areas once a year, again, to those 14 different states that we're responsible for. We normally let everyone know ahead of time what dates will be out there so that we can schedule one-on-one appointment times. And after that initial 6-month in-person appointment, then we'll see all of our graduates every 1 to 3 years for the life of the placement. So initially it'll be 6 months, and then a year, and then maybe 2 years, 3 years. So again, as we get to know you as a graduate and everything's going well, we tend to extend that amount of time. But if there are concerns, we do have the ability to shorten that. If we want to see you in 6 months or a year instead of 2 years, we can do that. But again, we are also not only available in person, but always available by phone and email as well. We do occasionally have some seminars that happen. They don't necessarily happen yearly right now. But again, we make our graduates aware of any sort of events or seminars that we're having in their area. And that piece that I mentioned earlier about open communication, another reason for that being so important is when it comes to having that last talk that no one wants to discuss about retirement. We really hope that our graduate dogs are out there working for a good amount of time. We think on average 8 to 10 years for the average working life of one of our dogs. They're about 2 years old by the time they graduate with someone typically. So hopefully they're working until they're 10 or 12 years old, and then get to enjoy the retired life a little bit. And so there's a lot of variation with that. Again, everything is determined on kind of a case-by-case basis. We get a lot of questions about the retirement topic, such as getting to keep your dog versus us taking the dog back. And I will point out that CCI does retain ownership of all of our dogs until retirement. If a graduate decides that upon retirement they'd like to keep the dog through their retirement, in most cases they can certainly do that, and ownership then would change over to you, to the graduate officially. But part of the reason we retain ownership is, again, for the sake of the dog. If there were concerns or issues that we weren't able to resolve with the graduate, if there were reasons why we needed to take the dog back, we could do that. Again, not something that would ever be a surprise, that we wouldn't be discussing with the graduate along the way. But, that's another reason why, again, we mentioned the open communication being important, is we really want to be here instead to support our graduates through the aging process and the retirement process, and finding out what solution works best for both the graduate and the dog. So we do have the ability to bring the dog back to us if need be. Sometimes that's the graduate's choice if they, especially if they're looking to get a successor dog from us and they are not maybe able to financially support having 2 dogs at once, especially a new dog and an older dog that's needing more medical care. Again, and this is why it's a case-by-case basis, because we know everybody's financial situation and support systems are different. Sometimes the dog can be adopted by a family member or friend while the person gets a successor dog from us, so they can still be in touch and connect with their retired dog. Otherwise, sometimes people are also just fine with having 2 dogs in the house at the same time. And again, we work with the graduate to help through that retirement process and the adjustment period of having a retired dog and a new 2-year-old dog in the household at the same time. It is possible. All right. And so Hope did a great thing here where you know, we like to remind everybody again about there always being, we aren't the only assistance dog organization out there. So we realize that we're not always the right fit for everyone. And so when we do recognize that, you know, we don't just say goodbye and good luck to those that we aren't able to progress through our program, but we do refer them to Assistance Dogs International. So Assistance Dogs International is a wonderful, large sort of umbrella organization. They are the ones that we are accredited by, so they kind of set the service dog or assistance dog bar. They kind of set the rules and the expectations for all organizations. So having accreditation by them is a good thing. As Hope put on here, there are some other great organizations, not only here in the US, but internationally as well. So always feel free to look them up. Their website is simply their full name of assistancedogsinternational.org. So you'll see us listed on there as well as these other organizations, as well as a whole list of others. That list is constantly changing and being updated by them. So you can certainly feel free to take a look.
And I know we had one more question about specifically, Erin, if you could tell us a little bit more, you know, if you are correcting Pine, but it's difficult, maybe you're fatigued that day, to use your arms to restrict him with the leash. Are there other ways you can do that, or how can you control a dog? How do you think someone with FOP would be able to work in a situation where they had very limited arm movement or weren't able to use the leash as well?
Yeah, so at first I was using the leash a lot to correct him, but then eventually, because he's just so used to me pulling on the leash with that correction, I really don't have to leave, like at home he's not on his leash, so if I'm giving him correction, it's just the word don't, and so then he knows not to do it. It's when I'm out that I use his leash to correct him. That's really if he's like not paying attention at all. And if I'm having issues like with my arm that day, I usually use my wheelchair a little bit. Like I'll turn my wheelchair in the opposite direction to give him that correction. Just not like super, like really, not like a lot, so that it like doesn't hurt him or anything. But just if I don't have that range of motion in my arm that day, I'll use my wheelchair kind of to get that extra, I guess, motion of the correction.